and welcome to Cupcake Addiction's giant rainbow layer cupcake tutorial, where I'll be showing you how to make this giant cupcake, and when you cut inside it is a beautiful layer of rainbow. Tools and equipment that we will be using today: I have my giant cupcake mould. I'm using a silicone mould today. You can also use a metal mould for this, but I just prefer the silicone. I find them easier to use. I've got a double batch or 2 packet mixes of whatever your favourite vanilla cake mix is. So I'm just using a white or a yellow vanilla cake mix. You can use a recipe of your own. If you use a packet, make sure you do a double packet. You want enough essentially for 24 cupcakes. I've got my food colours. I've got just liquid colours, and I've got red, yellow, green, blue and pink. You can also use colour pastes. They're a little bit more concentrated, so you will need a little bit less, but I'm just going to use liquid for this. I've got 6 bowls, I've got a couple of big spoons, and I've got 6 teaspoons. Let's get started. Now I've preheated my oven. It's a moderate oven. I will leave the temperatures in the description box below. We want to lay out all of our lovely 6 bowls. We're going to do 6 colours. So what I want to do is just spoon that mix into those 6 bowls. So you've got about the same amount in each bowl. Alright, so I've divided that batter evenly into these 6 containers. Now I'm just going to colour it. Now I'm not going to do purple today. Don't hate me, it's not because I don't like purple. I've just decided to go with pink instead, as this cake will be for my lovely niece's birthday party. So I'm going to start with red. I'm going to put the red in the purple container, and I'm going to put 2 capfuls of that liquid food colouring in each colour. I'm going to try and keep the colours pretty close to the same ones that the bowl's in. It's just going to make it a little bit easier for me. If you don't have a rainbow of coloured bowls, then white will obviously do. And don't be afraid to use a bit of colour in these, because you really do want those rainbow colours to be nice and bright. You want this cake to pop when people cut into it. For my orange, I'm going to use mostly yellow, so I'm going to do 1.5 cups of yellow, just 1/2 cup of red, or not even, maybe just 1/4 cup of red. Alright, now take your teaspoons, pop one in each bowl, and we're just going to stir that colour through all of that mixture. It's all looking quite neat and uniformed at the moment. So I'm just going to carefully stir that colour through until it's all completely combined. We'll repeat that step with each of our lovely colours. If you love our tutorials, make sure that you check out our channel, My Cupcake Addiction. We upload several times a week. We would love it if you subscribed. We've got lots of great rainbow and other themed cupcakes and cake pops on our channel. And we're always coming up with great and new inventive ideas that you guys can make at home. You can see there, you can tell when that colour's all combined, you've got a really nice, really vibrant colour. So we'll just repeat that with all of our colours. Now you are going to have quite a bit of offcuts and leftovers from all of these beautiful colours, so why not pair them up with some of our stunning rainbow cake pops? You can turn all of those lovely crumbs and offcuts into beautiful, bright, colourful cake pop mix. Pair some cake pops with your lovely rainbow layer giant cupcake. Alright, so we've coloured all of our lovely vanilla or white or yellow cake mix. Now I'm going to take my giant cupcake mould, which I have completely greased, so I've just sprayed that with some non-stick spray. You can also use butter to grease it, but do make sure it's really well greased. You want to have a think here about where the layers in your cupcake are going to sit. So I know the colour scheme that I want. I want to have red at the top, and I want to have pink down the bottom. I'm going to go red, orange, yellow, green, blue, pink. So the bottom half, I'm going to start off by doing what's going to be on the bottom first. So I'm going to do my pink first, and I'm just going to take that bottom section, and I'm going to tip all of that lovely cake mix into that bottom section. Stir it around with a spoon just so it's nice and level. Now at the same sort of time, because we're going to bake both of these halves together, put your pink in there. My top layer is going to be red, so I'm going to take all of that red and I'm going to spoon it into my top half. Give it a little stir around so it's nice and even. Now we're going to take those. I'm going to put these ones, because they're a silicone mould, I'm going to put them onto a baking tray before I put them in the oven, just so that the silicone doesn't move on the oven trays or anything. And I'm going to pop them in for about 15 minutes, but I'm just going to check on them, and as soon as they spring back in the middle and a skewer or cocktail stick comes out clean when I poke it in the middle, they're going to be ready. Okay, so they've come out of the oven, and the cook time was actually closer to 30 minutes than the 15 that I anticipated. I think it was about 25, 27 minutes. Now, because we've given that such a good spray, you can see there, it's literally just coming away. So I'm just going to pop my hand inside, flip it out, and we can pop that on a cooling rack, or you can just rest it on your bench. And the same with the top. With the top ones, I do always like to just roll the edges down, just around the top there, because the top bit can be a little bit fiddly. Don't worry if you've got any little crispy edges. It's actually still quite hot. Don't worry if you've got any little crispy edges, because we will trim all of those edges off so that all we expose is that lovely beautiful colour. Now for that top little dome or that top button, I'm actually just going to push down on it. And as I do, excuse me, it's really hot. You can see the steam coming off it. So there you've got quite a nice, we've got a red top and we've got a pink bottom. Pop those off to the side to cool, and we will go and give our pan a rinse before adding in some more colours. Okay, so I've washed out my giant cupcake base. Now I'm not going to use the top again. I'm only going to use the top for that very, very top colour, and I'm fortunate enough to have 2 of these giant cupcake containers, so that's going to cut down my cook time a little bit. Obviously if you've only got one, you're just going to do this one colour at a time. So my next colour is going to be, from the bottom up, blue. I have re-greased those lovely giant patty pans, so do make sure that you are really giving them a good spray with your non-stick spray, or a good grease with butter, before each colour goes in. Alright, so that's blue, and then we'll do our green. And off they go into the oven for another 25 to 30 minutes. Okay, so we've baked those last 2 colours, the second lot of 2 colours, and you guessed it, once again, exactly the same thing. Now these 2 are going to go off into the oven. That's going to be the last of our baking, and when we come back we are going to have our 6 beautiful colours of cake ready to go, ready to carve, stack and decorate into our beautiful rainbow layer cupcake. Okay, so we're back and we've got our 6 beautiful coloured lovely pieces of our giant cupcake ready to go. Now I will mention these are completely cooled. These are not even remotely warm, so make sure you're not trying to work with even slightly warm. You need to give them a couple of hours to completely cool down. I've got a little bit of our perfectly pipeable buttercream frosting, and I've just popped that into just a piping bag with any nozzle you like. You don't have to have a piping bag, but I just find it a little bit easier for dispersing the icing. I've got a spatula, I've got a serrated edge knife, this is a bread knife, and I've got an offset spatula. You can use just a regular spatula for both, or a knife, but I just like working with the offset spatula. I've also got one of our giant chocolate patty pans. Now I do have a tutorial on how to make this. I will leave the links to that and the buttercream frosting in the description box below. Now this one here, I've done white chocolate as my outer layer, and I've coloured that white chocolate with a little bit of sky blue Wilton colour paste, and then I've just used plain white chocolate for the inside because no one's really going to see that anyway. So the first thing that we want to do is we're just going to pop a little bit of that frosting in the bottom, just a bit of a blob, and then you want to take your nice soft flexible spatula and just scoop it up the sides. Now this is just going to give the cupcake something to adhere to on the sides, so that when you do cut it, it does stick to those chocolate sides. So I need a little bit more just to cover over that side. Try not to move it around too much. All the way up. Alright, now we're going to take our bottom colour. For me, that's going to be pink. So just to give us a little bit of room. Now what we want to do, all of these are going to be the same size apart from our top piece. Now as you can see that because it's been baking in the oven, you've got a little bit of kind of darkness of colour. So what we're going to do is just cut the top section off. So just come down nice and flat. To get a nice even cut, I like to actually turn the cake as I'm cutting. because I can see exactly where I'm cutting, and just trim the top off. You can see that beautiful colour that's coming out there. This is going to be what's really seen, that bright, bright colour as you cut into it. So don't worry about your edges. Now with the bottom two colours, I'm going to trim off the edges. And you'll notice this if you followed us through our giant cupcake basics. We actually do trim off the entire base of the giant cupcake. I'm only going to do that with, I think, my bottom two colours for this one, because we've baked everything in the bottom of that pan, so you're not getting the rise of the size as you come up the giant cupcake. So this is what you should have, sort of a bit of a, I guess it's like a hexagon-y, or I don't know, don't even know how many sides that one's got, but I'm just going to plop that in. Give it a nice little push down so that it is secured, and that buttercream is going to help to not just stick that into the cupcake case, but it's also going to help to make it nice and airtight so that it doesn't dry out in there. Alright, so we want to get that buttercream frosting, and we're going to just put a nice even swirl if you can. Take that lovely flexible spatula again. Now, one of the things with rainbow cake that you really do want to try and do is get about the same amount of frosting in between each layer. So you don't want to, when you cut it, you do want it to all be quite nice and even. There we go. Now, the next colour for me is going to be blue. Get that pink out of the way. I'm going to use that pink to make some absolutely delicious cake pops. Same thing again with the blue. Just cut that top off. You can see there as you bring that top off, these are the colours that you're going to see. Not the stuff on the outside that's been baked. You're actually going to see these beautiful, bright, gorgeously vibrant colours. Trim the sides off that one. Once again, nice little hexagon-y type shape. If you want to trim the bottom you can, but that's not going to be seen. That's just from the non-stick spray that's been in the giant cupcake case. I might just take it off. I don't think anybody's going to see it because it's all going to be stuck into the frosting, but I'll know it's there. Beautiful. Now that one's just going to sit on top there. Now you'll see there I've got a tiny little bit of a gap around the outside, so we're just going to fill that in with a bit of frosting as we put on our next layer. Don't go too thick with the frosting. You really don't want it to be too crazy thick because there are a lot of layers. So try and keep it even, but also make sure it's not too thick. Just to fill in my little side gaps there. Now, as you move into the next colour, which for us is going to be green, do not trim the sides, just trim the top off your green. And that's because we're actually getting larger at the top of this giant patty pan, or giant cupcake case. I hear a lot of you guys don't call it a patty pan, so I shall try not to. And sit that one on top. And again on top. Our next colour is going to be the yellow. You guessed it, we're going to trim off the top and just sit it on top. Now you'll see as I get above the large patty pan, I'm actually not going to put anything down the sides just at the moment. I'm just going to do my layers of frosting in between. We'll come back and work on those sides shortly. And finally the red. Now with the red, I'm not going to trim the top pointy bit, I'm going to trim the bottom of it. And I'm also going to take off the edges of the red. Because of the way we've done this, we haven't used the entirety of the top half. It's getting quite tall, so I want to take off the edges of the red, and we're actually going to carve down the shape of our giant cupcake with our knife and build it up a little bit using our buttercream frosting. So sit that red on top. Now that is looking like one heck of a giant cupcake sandwich. Alright, now from here, I'm going to just take my knife and I'm going to cut from the top of that cupcake. I'm actually going to round it off a little bit on the top because I don't want it to be quite so high. So just round it off a bit. And then we're going to cut down the outside. Now this is just going to help taper it down, and we don't want that top layer to be too much thicker than the other layers. So you really want it to be about the same width. When you get down close and have a look at it, you want it to be about the same height as the rest of your layers. And the rest of your layers should all be pretty well even because we've divided that mix so evenly into its 6 different portions, and we've baked the same amount in each one. Now you may also notice, and this is a really great opportunity to answer a frequently asked question about the giant cupcake cases, can you see that big crack there? That is a big crack that's happened, and it's probably happened because maybe my chocolate was a little bit thin in that particular spot when I've done it, so you can see it's cracked in 2 places. I'm actually going to show you how to repair a crack like that. All is not lost, don't cry, don't throw it in the bin, it's all fixable. Okie dokie. So I'm in a bit of a mess here, so I'm just going to pop off and have a little tidy up, and then we'll be back for the next steps. Okay, so we're back and I've had a bit of a tidy up. Now, as I mentioned, I do want to show you guys how to fix cracks, alright? These are made out of chocolate, cracks are going to happen, cake can be heavy, but it's not the end of the world. So I've got some of that blue chocolate, as I mentioned, it's just white chocolate coloured blue. I've popped it into just a Ziploc bag, and I've just cut a little hole out of the end of it to make a little mini piping bag. Now, I'm just going to squeeze that into, putting quite a bit of pressure, so you want to get it as far into that crack as you can, and I can actually see it seeping in there to meet up with the cake. Bring it out so that it comes over that crack. You can see there it's like a little bit of a seam, and then take your finger and run it up the side, and that's just going to smooth it off. It's not going to be perfect. Now I like to do this twice, so I'll smooth it off. I'm going to let that completely set. You can see that you can still see a bit of a crack. We're going to come back shortly, we're going to do it again, and it's going to be completely invisible like it never happened. Okay, so that one's dry to touch. We're just going to apply a second coat. So again, just squeezing it in, and take that finger and just smooth it off. So there you have your pretty much repaired crack. It's not going to be 100% perfect, but it's better than scrapping the whole cupcake and starting again. Okay, so now that we've fixed our little crack, it's time to get frosting. So this is just going to be really quickly a very little bit of a crumb coat. Now there's a lot of frosting in this cupcake, so try to keep it a little bit less so on top and around. Just give it a nice crumb coat so that frosting picks up any of those crumbs and stops them from going into our lovely top coat. A little bit more down the sides, nice and close. You can see there I've got quite a few crumbs. This is why we do the crumb coat. Now at the end of my crumb coat, I'm actually going to take that spatula and just take off as much of that frosting as I can, just because there is quite a lot in, on and around this cupcake. And I'm actually going to pop that into the fridge for about 15 minutes just to let that crumb coat set nice and firm. Okay, so we're back from the freezer. That's now quite kind of touch dry, I guess. It's not frozen, definitely not frozen on the inside. I ended up putting mine in the freezer for about 5 minutes instead of the fridge for 15, so it just depends on if you've got a big enough freezer. Either one will do. So now I just want to go around the outside here, and I'm just going to build up that bottom a little bit. Because we've used that giant cupcake mould to make every single layer, your layers on top are a little bit skinnier. So if you do have like a 6-inch baking pan or something like that, that's fantastic, and you can bake, you know, 3 of your layers in the giant cupcake case and 3 of them in the baking pan. Give you a little bit more of I guess a larger layer on top. But if you don't, I'm just trying to give you ways that you can use your giant cupcake case that are a little bit different to the regular. So you don't need to go out and buy all of these pans and all of this equipment. So I'm just going to use my spatula and just work that down. See there, I'm just going back and forward, being careful not to pick up any crumbs, which you shouldn't now that you've given it that lovely freeze. You can see there now I've got lovely seamless white frosting. Just going back and forward initially just to get a nice even cover. If you love our tutorials, make sure that you subscribe to our channel, My Cupcake Addiction. We upload several times a week. I know I'm on a bit of a rainbow rampage at the moment, but we do other things other than rainbow, and we have heaps and heaps of great stuff for you to check out. Alright, so now that I'm at this stage, I'm going to take my spatula and I'm just going to smooth it off. If you wanted to decorate this like one of our other giant cupcakes, you can see here a couple of different examples. You've got the lovely shabby rose bouquet. You've got the rainbow butterflies, which is actually what I've done with this particular cupcake, and you can see the tutorial on that one on our channel. You can see here how gorgeous it looks when it's cut, and I'm sure it's going to impress all of your guests that inside this humble looking giant cupcake there's so much beautiful colour. Thanks very much for watching.